But today we're going to look at the third segment in social fitness, and we're going to talk about loneliness. What is loneliness? What does it mean to be lonely, right? So there's loneliness and there's solitude. They are not the same thing, right? Sometimes people miss them together. Solitude is beneficial, right? Is healthy, desirable, proactive or intentional step will take to be alone, right? And those of us that are introverted, will crave for that because that's where we get our energy. We don't get our energy in association. We get our energy in solitude. There's nothing wrong with solitude. Solitude is healthy and is good for your mental health. Loneliness is not healthy. Loneliness is a symptom of something being wrong in your life, something being wrong in your social life, something being wrong in your social tummy. You are hungry for association. That's also loneliness is telling you, right? And if you don't do something about it, it can hurt you, right? We'll talk more about it. I'm going to make up my slides here and we're going to dig more into it. All right, so I have my slide here and we're going to be, again, it's a book, The Good Life. And today we're going to take the third part in chapter 4. We'll finish it up next week. Then we'll go on to chapter 5. And again, it's part 3 of talking about social fitness, right? So loneliness does hurt, like I earlier said, right? It is negative. Loneliness is a subjective feeling or emotion of unwanted isolation. It just tells you that you are having a social isolation in your life. Loneliness is a symptom, right? It's telling you something is wrong, something is amiss in your life. It's the iceberg telling you something is amiss, and that something is that you are not having the right social association or emotional connection you're supposed to have, right? It's an indicator. It's a natural indicator in our life telling us something is amiss and we need to do something about it. If we don't do something about it, it can hurt us, right? It can hurt us, right? But it's a signal at first. If we don't do something about it, it becomes worse. It begins to dig deeper and deeper and deeper. Because if you don't address the issue, it's only going to get worse. And it could get to different levels of being chronic, existential, spiritual, and people have gone to commit suicide because of it. People have become depressed, be mentally sick. They've had memory loss, because they did not attend to the hunger, the symptom of loneliness in their lives, right? So it is a subjective feeling, showing that you have a social association that you don't want in your social isolation that you don't want in your life. It could be a lack of it, it could be a loss of it, right? Maybe you just broke from a relationship, that's so dear to your heart, and you can be lonely while in the midst of everybody. It has nothing to do with where you are, right? Whether you're with people or without people. Loneliness is an internal state. It's a mindset. It's not necessarily a real occurrence in itself. It's not about where you are in terms of people around you. It's your inability to connect with them. It's not the physical being alone. It's the fact that you are not able to connect with them with your soul. Your soul is not able to your soul feels isolated. It's not having the right connectivity to the other souls around you. It's not the physical. You could be in the midst of the crowd. You could be the center of the crowd. You could be a leader in that crowd, and yet you are alone, right? Because your soul is not finding connectivity with the other souls around you, right? So it is a state of the mind, right? Being alone is not the same as feeling lonely, right? But I mean that's a bit confusing. But what it means is that it is a state of the mind, right? You could be in the midst of everybody, but then you could still be lonely, right? So loneliness is an unpleasant emotional response to a perceived isolation. The word is perceived. You might not really be isolated in reality, but your perception is that you're isolated, and that perception will affect you negatively. It becomes your reality, even though it is not the reality. It's the way you perceive it that is important. Loneliness is a perception, not necessarily a reality, but that perception becomes your reality, right? No other person might be able to understand the way you feel because they can't see. It's a perception, but to you it is real, and it is real. You need to address it, right? So it's not any other person's heartache, it's yours, right? If you're lonely, you're lonely. You need to do something about it, right? So loneliness, again, it's a visible tip of the iceberg. It just tells you that it's a symptom telling you that all the things that are missing in your life, in your social life, in your emotional life, right? It's again, it's a mismatch between the quantity and quality of social isolation relationship you have and what you want. It's a mismatch between what you have and what you want in terms of quality and quantity of relationship. It's just, don't forget that social fitness, right? It just shows that you're in your mind, you're not socially fit. You're not having the right quality and quantity of social interaction or association that you believe you should have, right? It's a perception in your mind, right? Someone else might have the same as you have and be okay, right? But in your mind, your tank is not full, and your perception is reality, right? So loneliness, again, is defined as a distressing feeling that accompanies the perception that one's social need are not being met, right? It's a distressing feeling. It's a distressing emotion that comes to say when you perceive that your social needs, right, are not being met, whether in quantity or in quality, right? So that's what loneliness is, right? So loneliness will affect us emotionally, affects us physically, and it can also affect us spiritually, right? It can affect every area of our life if you allow it to persist. Don't forget, when it first comes, it's a warning, it's a symptom. If you don't do something about it, it can hurt you. It can hurt you emotionally. It can hurt you psychologically. It creates mental sickness. It can hurt you physically. You can have health issues as a result of it. And you can also have spiritual issues, get depressed and not just have a sense of being, right? So it makes you more susceptible to pain, right? Because your immune system gets affected by the perception of loneliness, right? There's a suppression of the immune system, immune system, right? It can diminish your brain function, mental sickness. It can affect your sleep, depression, and all of that. It can make you it just makes you not to have the feeling for life. It can take away your energy, your zest for life. It can diminish your desire to live, your desire to do things. It can take away your interest in life itself, right? You don't have that internal push to do things, to live, right? So that those are things, ways in which loneliness can affect somebody, right? So there are different types of loneliness, right? Different types or different levels of loneliness, you might call it. The easiest and most common is emotional loneliness, right? And it's just talking about you have an absence of meaningful relationship in your life. You don't have people that you can connect with. You don't have people that you can tell the important things to you. You don't have some people that you feel understand you and you understand them, right? That's a common one. And you'll find a lot of popular people that have emotional loneliness, right? You imagine the other the man that died, that committed suicide the other day, yet he was an entertainer. He made other people laugh, yet he was lonely because he didn't feel or did not have people that could connect to him where he was, right? He was making other people happy, but he was needing someone to make him happy, someone who can see him, someone who can understand him, right? Again, there was the other popular Christian singer who talked about depression, even after ministering to others, comes to a place of loneliness because you're not able to connect with other people. Yeah, and this kind of connection could be at different levels. There's the emotional one. There's also an intellectual connectedness, right? Where you feel people are not understanding you. People are not understanding where you are, what you're saying. And part of that is also what we call spiritual loneliness, right? You just don't find people that can connect with who you are, right? And as simple as this could be a big issue in people's life, right? So the other type of loneliness is what we call social loneliness, right? This is also common. It just means that you might not have emotional loneliness. You have one or two people you can relate with and be yourself. It's just a loneliness that occurs in social setting, either because you're shy, you have social anxiety, you just don't fitting in the crowd. I might not have emotional loneliness in my life, but when it comes to social loneliness, partly because I grew up as a shy person, partly because I'm an introvert and I crave solitude. I have to shake myself to readjust myself so I don't have a social loneliness. Because when I go into a social setting, it's not my comfort zone, right? It's not my comfort zone. So I have to rise up to the requirement of such a setting, right? But if you can't rise up to such a setting, you could feel lost in a crowd, either because you're shy, you're anxious, you're too conscious to what other people are thinking about you, you have low self-esteem, you don't feel you measure up, things like that. That's what leads to social loneliness, right? The next type of loneliness is what we call situational loneliness. This could be loneliness of the cause because you either moved to a new place, you relocated, you changed your job, uh, you change location, the weather issue. I mean, winter gives loneliness to some places where they don't see the sun for days. All of that, you know, can affect, can bring about loneliness in your life. And so it's because of situation changes or circumstances around you. You're no more around your comfort zone, right? That's what we call situation loneliness. The other type of loneliness is called transient loneliness, right? And this is just one that comes and goes. Every so often you feel lonely, then something happens, you don't feel lonely. It's just a loneliness that comes and goes, based on time, situation, days, but it's not something that stays. It's just something it's not chronic. It's not something that stays there. But for whatever reason, you have emotional high, emotional low. Key thing is that it's not staying, it's not persistent. Right, we say it's transient. But the other side to transient is chronic loneliness, right? When now it has a hold of you. When loneliness first of all starts, you have a hold on it. You can do something about it. It's mere symptom. It's mere the iceberg, and you can do something about it. But if you allow it to persist, it can become master lord over you. Then it becomes difficult to overcome, right? It becomes a part of your person. Same way with depression, right? When depression first visits you, you can control it. But if you allow it to persist and go into what we call clinical depression, it's more difficult to shake yourself off that, right? That takes a whole lot more to shake yourself off. It's the same way chronic loneliness could be, right? it takes a whole lot more effort. It's not impossible to come out of it, just like I've come out of clinical depression. It's not that it's not impossible, it's just more difficult because it's now more associated with your being. It's now become a numb, more like habitual, right? Then you have to do a whole lot more to get out of it, right? Uh, and lastly, or last two, I spoke about spiritual loneliness earlier on, talking about emotional loneliness. Spiritual loneliness is just you just feel an overall feeling or sense of detachment from everyone. You just don't seem to connect with them. You can't understand it. You can't really put it this or that. It's just a sense of not feeling it with people, right? And it's a feeling that your life is incomplete and lacks a meaning. It's a vague sense of longing that you can't say what or who you long for. Just that feeling of aloofness, right? You can do something about it. Sometimes the whole lot is because you don't know yourself. So one of the ways you help yourself get out of spiritual loneliness is beginning to discover yourself, discover who you are. That will tell you that you're no strange person. It's been an awesome adventure for me discovering who I am, right? Probably one of the biggest things that has revolutionized my life. I used to think I was a strange person and there was only one of me. But the more I do study on personality, I get to find out that I've been well studied. All right, I've been well studied. There's nothing new there's nothing new under the sun concerning me. I've been well studied, right? And I can read about studies concerning me, and I can then learn how to do me better, right? And everyone can do that also, right? We've all been well studied, and we can do better as we get to know ourselves better, right?